Oh, let me turn this light up. Hi, good morning, and welcome back to Create, Share, Inspire podcast. This is episode 683, and we are here live in Southwest Florida in my studio. It is still storming really badly outside. We sure would like that to end sometime soon. I actually got about an hour window between storms last night and was able to go for a run, and I felt so good. I haven't been outside in days and days, so that was exciting. Anyway, if you are joining me live, please say hello. I think I've seen a few names so far. Hi, Joe and Christine, Chris. Good morning, Grace and Judy and Jane. Lorraine, good morning. Hi, Rita. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hi, Marcia. Hi, Mindy. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Jackie. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Lisa. Good morning, everybody. Hello, Creative Garden and Margaret. Christine, good morning. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Marcia and Sandshell. Good morning. Hi, Thea. Hi, Diane. Hi, Susie. Wait a few seconds for people to pop over from pre-chat and notifications. Hi, Joyce. Hello, Donna. Good morning. All right, well, welcome back to Create, Share, Inspire podcast. This is episode 683, and we are here live in Southwest Florida in my studio this morning. I wanted to get a little technical today, and I'm inspired to do so because I'm working on a sampler shawl, and I will show you a sneak peek of it. And because I am working on a sampler shawl, it really just gave me an opportunity to show you some examples of how you can manipulate stitch patterns to grow or decrease, specifically grow in the examples that I'm going to show you this morning to suit your needs. And then I'll show you some other examples of garments where if you're in between sizes or you want to make something a little more exaggeratedly A-line at the bottom, let's say in a top-down pullover, like we're going to talk about the Trisha pullover back here too. And I'm going to tell you how if you wanted to make it a little more A-line, which would not only work if you wanted to make it fuller in your waist or your hips, but it would also give you the ease required if you wanted to turn it into a dress. To make something a dress, you really do have to consider making something a little bit wider at the bottom to allow for the gait of your walking, right? The gait meaning the distance when you separate your legs to actually walk. That is what requires more volume down there. So I'll show you a suggestion for how to do that within the stitch pattern here, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Not how to make increases in a stitch pattern, but how to actually just grow the actual motif of a stitch pattern when it applies in a design. And so I'll wait a few seconds and see if there's any questions or if anybody wants to discuss something first. We did sell out of all of the Be So Baby color cards yesterday and have a few people signed up on the wait list. If you did not get a color card yesterday before they sold out, please sign up for the wait list so that I can get a good idea of how many to make in the next batch. They're extremely labor intensive, so I really just want to make them for the demand for them. I don't want to make too many extra. Like, I always want to make a few extra, but I don't want to make 100 extra and spend a whole week on it either. But I know it's important to some people, so if you haven't already gotten one and you're still interested, please sign up for that wait list on the shopping page for it. Oh, and I should probably tell you what I'm wearing too. I have my hair in a side braid this morning, and I actually was able to pull out the strands to make it look a little bigger than my hair actually is, which is always fun. But I wanted to show you that I am wearing the Sweet Clara vest today over a jean skirt. Can you see I have a skirt on? Yep, a jean skirt. I tucked in my tank top, which also, remember I said the bodysuit I think is a very nice fitted look under a tank, under you know, shorts, pants, or a skirt. And so I tucked in a tank top for the same kind of a look today. It actually works a lot better with a bodysuit, but you can get the same look with a tank top if you just simply tuck it in. And I'm wearing over the top, I'm wearing a Sweet Clara cardigan without sleeves, so it just has that cap sleeve from the raglan top-down shaped yoke, and with a chain tie corset tied up the center to give me a little bit of closure at the top, which I also feel gives me a little modesty over my cleavage as well. So this is made in Be So Sporty yarn in colorway Caribbean turquoise, and we do have that color in stock. So if you want to make the exact same one, you can, or I have tons of other colors in stock too. So you could make it in so many different colors, whether it's in Be So Sporty yarn, Be So Sporty silver bling, or Be So Sporty gold bling. We've got lots of colors. Yes, Lisa, it is a fun project to make. It is a quick project to make. All the Sweet Clara patterns move really quickly, and it's a fun piece to wear. It's really easy to pop this over anything. As you've seen, I've worn it over a bunch of different things at this point, including fitted dresses. I've worn it over same color for a tonal combination. This is really pretty over my turquoise fitted dress, where they kind of match in color, so you just see that textural component as a layering piece. That's really pretty. Obviously today it's higher contrast. I'm wearing turquoise over white and denim, but you really can't go wrong. If you pick a color that you like to wear, or a color that's a great accent color for you, you can wear it over anything. You could wear it over neutrals, tonal, or contrasts. You know, just pick a color that makes you happy. Yes, Lisa, it is definitely a weekend project. Sweet Clara moves really quickly, so it makes, as far as garments go, it's definitely not quite an instant gratification, but it is a quick gratification project for sure. Definitely. Does anybody have any other questions about what I've talked about so far? And once I've tied it, I throw it on like a pullover. Yes, it is a layering piece that's open down the front, but once I tie it, I just throw it over my head. Julia wants to know if I'm safe from the fires. Are there fires here in Southwest Florida now? Maybe over Alligator Alley? I have not heard about them. I've heard about the fires out west in the U.S. It's possible we have them here too, but I have not heard anything yet. I better check. The Sweet Clara is a crochet pattern. Yes, Tammy, this is a crochet pattern. It's a crochet pattern with, excuse me, with lots of sizes. You can download the pattern on my website, and then there's a link on that pattern page to also watch the tutorial videos for it, and you can find those here on my YouTube channel, but you can also access them from my website as well. Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, I did something different today. I did it yesterday after the podcast, and I was like, oh, that's cute. I'm going to do that again. So I pulled this side back with a comb, then brushed everything to this side, did a quick braid, and then once I braided it, pulled out the different pieces, you know, like you've seen on Pinterest and YouTube and maybe Facebook before, to give myself a little more volume for the for the braid. And then my bangs were acting weird, so I threw a flower in there too. And I wore the flower on the correct side today, so yay me. As long as you're single, you wear it on the right. When you're taken, you wear it on the left. Thank you, Julia. I love turquoise. Love turquoise and fuchsia, two of my favorite colors. Two of many favorite colors, but still two of my favorite colors. Okay, so we should probably get down to the meat of what we were going to talk about today. And so I'm going to give you a quick sneak peek of a sampler shawl that I'm working on. This is a crochet shawl, not blocked yet, but I've added 3 different stitch patterns so far, and I'm about to add the 4th stitch pattern. And I think at that 4th stitch pattern will probably be done. Depends on how big it ends up being. But what I've been doing is 3 repeats of each of the stitch patterns, and separating them by bands of 2 rows of double crochet. Isn't it pretty? So pretty so far. I'm very excited about it. But I really thought that it was going to be done after that third stitch pattern so that I could use that as the edging, but it just really isn't that big yet. It's still a pretty small shawl, and I know that if I released it this size, I'd get lots of questions on how to make it bigger. So I figure I may as well just make it bigger and avoid all of that, because that ends up being a very detailed conversation if it's more than just a one-word answer in a comment on a video or in an email, something like that. It's actually pretty complicated to grow something that doesn't have any shaping. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because there is no shaping within each of these stitch patterns. What I have done is manipulated the stitch count in the sections between the stitch patterns to create the correct multiple for the different stitch patterns. So for example, the multiple for this section was 3 stitches. The multiple for this section is 8 stitches, and the multiple for this section is 12 stitches. And going forward, I'm actually making the multiple for the next section even larger than that, because I want to break it down into 2 multiples per 1 multiple. So what does all that mean? So let's say you're working along, you can do, and that's one of the reasons why adding the bands of double crochet between the sections works so well. Not only does it give you a nice structured border between the stitch patterns, but it allows you to make those increases in there to get the next stitch count. So thought I'd show you the math of what I've done so far. So I'm not going to show you the first section because that one was pretty easy. I think that, let me see if I can find it, because it is. All right, so the first section, yeah, okay, so the first section ended at, is this gonna come across? Yeah, the first section ended at 167 stitches. Oh, I'm using the wrong pen. Where are the pens that work on here? There they are. Actually, it's for the board. So the first section ended at 167 stitches, and the second section was 21 repeats times 8 stitches per repeat plus an extra 3. Remember I said the second section had an 8 stitch repeat. So I actually started fooling around with this, figuring, okay, let me get my calculator up. So I knew that it was 167 stitches in the first section. I knew my second section was going to have a repeat of 8 stitches. So I took 167 and divided it by 8 to see roughly where I was at. So I had 20.87. Okay, so if I decided to go with 20 times 8, that would give me 160, which is 7 stitches less, which means I would have had to evenly space 7 decreases across the row to reach that. Or if I bump that up to 21, then I would do 21 times 8 and then still have, and I needed an extra 3 for that. So what did that number end up being? 171. So it was going to either be 20 times 8 plus 3 equals 163, or 21 times 8 plus 3 would equal 171. Now I'm doing a top-down increasing shawl, so it really wouldn't make sense to decrease 4 stitches across that row. It would make sense to increase up, right? So to go from 167 to 171 is only 4 stitches. So in that band of double crochet row, all you need to do is evenly space 4 extra double crochets across that row. So like working 2 double crochets into 1 stitch evenly across that row. It doesn't matter where, as long as you don't do them all side by side. It really isn't that crucial that they be precisely separated, but just try to evenly space them across the row. So we end up getting 171 stitches, and then we can evenly do the second stitch pattern. That's a multiple of 8 plus 3 with 21 repeats. So then the third stitch pattern is a multiple of 12. So we went from this first section that increased out to 167 stitches, and then we go on to this stitch pattern here that's a multiple of 8, and so that's how we figured out the math to go on to the multiple of 8 for the second section. So now, once we get down to the double crochet section, when we're done with the second section, I already knew that I wanted my third stitch pattern, you can see the third one started down there, that I wanted that third stitch pattern to be a multiple of 12. So then I take 171 divided by 12 to figure out roughly where I'm at. 171 divided by 12. Is that what I did? No, let's see. No, I know what I did. I went with keeping the same multiple and seeing how many extra increases I would need, because I knew I needed to have a lot of increases to go to the next section. So first I divided 171 by 21 to see what happened. Hold on. No. This is what I did. Hold on. I've got my notes, and I did this really late last night, so give me a second. So I knew that I had 21 repeats. So this is what I did. I knew I had 21 repeats, and I knew the next stitch pattern was 12 stitches per repeat. And I knew that it had one extra, so the third stitch pattern is a multiple of 12 plus 1. So I was curious to see if I stayed within the same repeats, how high up would that number go? And so that number ended up being 253. And I was worried that that was a really large jump from 171. So I thought, well, let's see what, if I decrease the repeat down to 18 repeats, let's see where that number is. So I did 18 times 12 plus 1. 18 times 12 plus 1 is 217. It's 217. Okay. So then that gave us 217 from 171 was not as large of a jump, and so that made more sense to me. And so how I did, and once I knew that was going to work, I didn't have to do all of those increases in the double crochet section. How did I know that I needed 21 repeats? That one was determined by figuring out where I was on the stitch count, dividing by my multiple, and figuring out roughly where I was. I was roughly at 20 and a fraction, and so I rounded up to 21 to come to the plus 3 to come to 171. So that's how I figured out that I needed 21 to begin with. But what I did down here was figure out I needed to go from an 8 stitch repeat to a 12 stitch repeat, and I was curious, if I stay with that same number of repeats, is that going to increase too much, reduce the number of multiples this time to get to a more reasonable amount of increases? So that's where I decided to do less, and I knew because it was already within the right number of stitches, I knew that it would work out. So from there, to start that third section, I just needed to figure out how many stitches to, like, let's say that normally a stitch pattern would say when you chain 3 you skip 3 stitches. If you need to try to force that into a smaller space so that you're growing, you would skip 1 or 2 or even 0 stitches, so that on the following repeat you've got the number of stitches you need, even though you started with less stitches. So let me give you an example. Let's say we'll do it on a simple chain section. So let's say we have 5 double crochets. Well, I gotta do this upside down so it makes sense. Okay, let's say you've got 5 double crochets on your previous row, and you're going to need and you're trying to increase this to, a 7 stitch repeat from 5. So a 7 stitch repeat would probably be chain 3, skip 3, single crochet in the next, chain 3, skip 3. But if you're trying to force a 5 stitch repeat into a 7 stitch repeat, then you would do that chain 3, but do it over skipping 2 stitches, then single crochet in the next stitch, and then chain 3 and skip 2, so that on your next row now, if you were going to work a double crochet into each chain and stitch, now you've increased it to see how you've increased it to 7? So we could even start this with 3. Let's say you started with a 3-stitch repeat and you wanted to increase that to a 7-stitch repeat. You would do your chain 3, skip 1, single crochet, chain 3, skip 1. Even though in the actual repeat, once you're established, it's chain 3, skip 3, so that you can work 3 double crochets over the chain 3s, you would be able to increase from a multiple of 3 to a multiple of 7, because now on the following row, you'd work 3 double crochets in the chain 3 space, 1 double crochet in the single crochet, and 3 double crochets in the chain 3 space. And see, now you've increased from a multiple of 3 to a multiple of 7. See how easy that is? You can just, especially when there's chains and a certain number of stitches that are required to be repeated in a stitch pattern, you can manipulate that section by using less in order to using less skip stitches so that you can grow that section. Yes, this pattern will be available once it's done. That's correct. I just want to go back and read all the questions. Okay, I answered the question about why 21. We did the math to figure that out. Do you keep count when you go during the first row, or do you go back and count when you decide to change stitch? There's a lot of counting involved here. I'm not sure what specifically you're asking about though, Christine. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you've stayed on track. Yep, and Karen wants to know if the pattern will be for sale. It will be for sale when it's done. But this is really great information to know. Like, let's say your stitch pattern, in whatever stitch pattern you're working on, let's say you want it, this would be a great way to add some increase for the lower section of anything, whether you're doing a top-down shawl or you're doing a garment and you want more shaping. You want to, let's say you want to make a ruffle at the bottom of something, or you want to add shaping to make something longer. So now let's talk about this stitch pattern, because this is totally different. This is a little more complicated than what I've just talked about, but honestly, the same sort of thing can apply here. So see how these 5 double crochet, these sections here are 5 double crochet. We've got 5 double crochets here and 5 double crochets here. So let's say you wanted to make this larger at the bottom. Change them from 5 double crochet sections to 7 double crochet sections, or 9 double crochet sections. So I don't have the actual stitch pattern in front of me, but let's say that these are chain 3s or chain 5s, whatever they are. You would want to increase them accordingly for how you're going to increase. So the motifs will end up, this is the Trixie Pullover. Judy's referencing the Paloma, and that's this one here. And we could dissect this one as well. You could probably do that with this one as well, because it has a shell component also. Anytime you have a shell component, instead of finding a way to do increases like a top-down raglan where you're adding more repeats to the pattern, you can just make your pattern repeat bigger. So I forget how many this one's a little more complicated, but the Trixie would actually be a little bit easier because these are 5 double crochet sections. So you'd need to pay attention to, let's say these are chain 5s for 5 double crochets. I don't recall at the top of my head, but whether they're 3 or 5, you would just want to increase accordingly to make sure to, let's say they're chain 3s for 5 double crochets, then you'd move up to chain 5s for 7 double crochets. You'd move up to chain 7 for 9 double crochets. Or if it's even and these are chain 5 spaces, then you would do chain 5 for 5 double crochets, chain 7 for 7 double crochets, and chain 9 for 9 double crochets. However you decided to do that, what would happen is these, you know, they look like clusters, like buds, right? They look like flower buds. These flower buds would just get bigger. And how cool is that? That you would keep the same number of repeats of your stitch pattern, but you would just make each repeat larger. Let's go back. When you start a new design, do you keep count of the... Christine, it depends. If you're making something where you need an exact number of stitches, you would absolutely count it again if you weren't confident that you counted it the first time. I almost always miscount when I'm making a long chain. Like you gave a number of 167, for example. If I had to do a chain 167 to start a project, I would absolutely have to count it a second time because more likely I counted wrong on the first time. In fact, I've got a great tip for that, and this applies for casting on for knitting or for doing a long chain for crochet, and that is, hold on, stitch markers. I like to place a stitch marker, depends on how much I'm doing. If I'm counting to 100, maybe a stitch marker every 25. If I'm counting to 200 or 300, I might put a stitch marker at every 50 so I don't lose count. It's really difficult when you're counting in the hundreds to lose count of which hundred you're on. Like once you get to 300, you can't remember if you're counting 199, 299. You could possibly be off by 100. I'm telling you, it sounds crazy. It's so true. It's happened to me my entire career. So what you need to do is put stitch markers at a number that you can remember you put it at. And if you can't remember what number you put it at, then you count that again too. It's just like in woodworking, don't they say measure twice, cut once, right? Well, the same applies here. Always count an extra time if you're not sure. Always. It is so easy to make a mistake in your counting at the beginning, and if you don't have the count right, you will make mistakes and have to start over anyway. So it is way more helpful to count more than once than have to rip out and start all over. So thanks for bringing that up, because this is a great tip. And with the split ring stitch markers that you can get in my crochet toolkit, they are split ring, so they open so you can mark them on anything, which is great for knitters, crocheters, great for not only marking the beginning and end of your round, but for things like this, to be able to just mark something for a count. They're multi-purpose and super, super helpful. Yes, measure twice, cut once applies to sewing and woodworking, and the concept applies to anything. Anytime you need to count something out, like starting chain, cast on, always important. Hairpin lace, yes, Christine, counting those loops, absolutely. Yeah, the fact that the stitch markers are color coded, that really helps too, for a variety of reasons, to figure, like when you're doing a repeat and then need to know the beginning and end of your round, it's great to have multiple colors for that too. Or if you're doing a sampler project where there's different sample stitches across a row, then you can change the color to remind you of which stitch pattern comes next. I did that and shared that tip on 2 seasons ago of Knit and Crochet Now TV show. That was on season 10. I had done a sampler project and talked about color coding the stitch markers in between every change to a different stitch pattern. That was, I think that's a great tip. Kat, thanks for the tip. She just started an 85 chain. Yeah, and an 85 chain, maybe do it, every 40 stitches, right? Or every 20 stitches. It's always a good idea to have extra stitch markers for sure. Counting is difficult, and counting high numbers, it is very easy to make mistakes. It's very easy to get distracted. We don't sit in a solitary confinement room while we're crocheting or knitting, right? We've got the phone going off, we've got the TV, we've got people asking us questions, we've got our mind racing on 100 different other things. There's a million reasons why you're distracted from getting your counts right. And it is, if you have wondered if it's just you, it is not just you. It is all of us. We all do it. So just remember, you are not alone. It is perfectly normal. I make mistakes at the 10 spots and the 100 spots. I could count to 70, and then instead of at 79 going to 80, I go back to 70. I've been doing this for years. I have no idea why my brain does that. Probably because I got a million other things spinning up there, but it happens, and I always, always, always have to recount. Even when I put those stitch markers in for the reminders, I still have to count. And you know what? It's always worth taking the extra few minutes. Always. But great questions today. I hope this was helpful. Hope it got your creative juices flowing and maybe starts making you think about how you can modify your existing patterns even more, or maybe even custom create things using your patterns as jumping off points. If you have other questions, please always feel welcome to ask me, even when the podcast is over. If you later in the day say, hey, you know what about that? Come back to the podcast and leave your question or comment here, because I get notified from those too. And so many of you don't even watch live, you watch the recording. So once you watch it the first time, please always feel welcome to ask. What else? I think we covered everything I meant to cover today. What yarn for the new shawl? This is Be So Baby yarn in colorway lilac. It's gonna be so pretty. I can't wait to show you the finished one. And I have a couple patterns that now I'm just waiting for the rain to stop so I can go outside and take photos. Then I will have 2 more pattern releases. The Apollonia wrap will be coming very soon. This one will be one of the next 2 to get released. And then right around the same time, I will be able to release the Shadow Bloom shawl. So those patterns are coming super soon. And then shortly thereafter, I will be releasing the Jada large travel bag. So those 3 patterns are coming soon. Still working on the e-bag, but you should find, hopefully I'll have those patterns out by the beginning of next week. Just waiting for the rain to stop. I don't do really well with indoor photography. I'm much better at photography outside in natural lighting. So just waiting for the rain to stop. Anyway, if you have any questions, again, always feel welcome to leave them in the comments. If you like the podcast, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please click that red button in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. And if you feel like sharing it with your friends, I have thousands of tutorial videos on here. Please feel welcome to browse them, share them with your friends. If you have questions, always leave them in the comments, because I get notified for comments throughout the day. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's going to be Friday tomorrow. Yay! TGI Friday.